if you have an aversion to really hard work for long periods of time, I think you're going to struggle, to try to scale a business.
What are two or three things that you did when you go back through the course of your career that you did as an originator that you think had a lot to do with your success?
If we have to break it down into, some of the key things that allowed that to happen, I have to start, and this isn't going to be accessible for everybody that listens to this, but I did spend some time in the Marine Corps when I was a kid and was introduced to a pretty unique brand of personal discipline, along with all of the other kind of intangible leadership qualities that they instill in their recruits. And so in that time, I discovered that I had a natural attraction to leadership, beginning with my own personal leadership, because that's really what I was there for. And so, when I got out into the civilian world, especially in the mortgage business, and found myself surrounded by civilians, I realized that I had a kind of a unique advantage over them, in that I could probably put up with a lot more, physical and mental pain than they could, just from my time in the service. And so I went about trying to outwork everyone, right? Wasn't going to let anybody work harder than me. So, I would say that, like, if you have an aversion to really hard work for long periods of time, I think you're going to struggle, to try to scale a business. And then I would say that the second thing, Tim, and this is something that I like to talk about, is that most people don't decide for greatness. They don't actually make a decision to do it. And what I have found out, if you look at the word decide, the old English words for decide mean to cut off. And so what I've learned is that making a decision means that you're cutting yourself off from any other options. Okay. And most people I've found, especially in coaching, and talking to other originators, is that people have a tendency to leave themselves kind of an escape hatch to mediocrity, if you will, right? Some kind of an out on whatever their big goal is, and they end up settling for less. And so I would say the second thing is going to be that I made a decision, that I was going to do this, and that I was going to burn all the bridges behind me, and there were no other options, and so that would probably be the second thing. And the third thing for me was my own personal development. I became a personal development junkie during that time, and had been introduced to some new thought leaders, introduced to some new books. And I began looking at my own personal life and realized that I was spending a ton of time doing things that were really creating negativity in my life and bringing negativity into my life, whether it was people or the shows I was watching, how I was spending my time. And so I literally audited my life, cut all of those things out, and replaced it with positive personal development material, and started developing new habits, like a daily success ritual. That's something that my friend Josh and I hold in common. It's a very dear part of our lives. That time every morning where we're working on ourselves and becoming the person that we need to become to achieve our goals. And began building habits there in that ritual. Beginning with waking up and working out every morning, introducing my body to some pain. I learned later that whenever we work out, that neurochemicals get released, neurochemicals of achievement. And so a lot of people that do this on a regular basis will find that they have some of their strongest insights, in those morning sessions. Reading personal development, I became just a huge consumer of knowledge. And so I found out that if I read 45 minutes a day, I could get through 52 books a year. And so I went from reading maybe a half a book a year to 40 or 50 new books a year. And, I've been doing that for well over a decade now. So all of those lessons that I learned, and as I read those books, I would read them through the lens of, how is this going to impact me in my mortgage career? And I would take note of the lessons, and then I would literally, go back to the office and turn myself into a laboratory, putting those things into play. And I would get the same positive results that those authors got. And so it was really, a journey of personal and professional development for me that kind of led me to the results that I was getting. And I think a really important thing to remember here, and it's an insight that I've had, is that really successful people in life, they don't have that success on the outside, okay, before they become the person on the inside. And it really is an inside game, almost all of it. And so once I realized that the solution was actually in my control, it's something that I had control over. Um, that's when I got really excited, right? Because I felt like I could really write my own ticket and there was nothing that could stop me. So if I had to break it down into the three things, I would say those are three major things that impacted my career early on.